Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz, presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Jack Manuell. What's up, Jack?
First game watching the Nets in Australia, Nick. One win. I'm gonna have to stay here if we keep doing this.
Yeah, Jack, you probably can't leave. So we're going to need you to stay over there. I'm sorry to your girlfriend, but Jack needs to stay in Australia.
For the Nets. For the Nets.
At least for the rest of the season. Then, you can go back in the summertime, but you got to be back for next year.
Sounds good.
But talking, the Nets won 111, 104 over the Magic. Third time to beat the Magic this season. 3-2 in their last 5 games. The Magic did arrest a couple of guys. They're into tanking, whatever. But the Nets will take a win where they can get it. What were your thoughts on getting that W?
The most balanced offense we've had all season, Nick. D'Angelo Russell, one of his best games with that triple-double. He seems to have a lot of really great performances in team losses, but it was good to see him have a real effect on the entire team and on the win. He was absolutely crucial, and some of the highlights that Nick posted and some of the highlights that we were talking about while the game was on was just simply outstanding. It was just an awesome game from D'Lo. Really felt good for him, and that rubber band, it looked good. I'm not sure why everyone was hating on it. It looked like Michael B. Jordan in Black Panther. He was rocking it.
Yeah, whatever floats his boat. If he plays that well, he can definitely keep it in all season long. Like you said, team effort though. 7 guys had 13 points or more. It's nice to see when it's not just one guy dominating. It's rare we've seen guys all have pretty good games this season. It's felt like it's been like, all right, D'Angelo's having a huge game, or all right, Rondé's having a huge game, or Caris. Not all at the same time. It was nice to see a lot of guys can contribute all in one win.
It was huge. And, we talked about the guys. Caris LeVert, 16 points, 6 assists. Jared Allen, 15 and 8. Damari Carroll, nice double-double, 14 and 12. Rondé, 14 and 9. Joe Harris, 14 and 4. Allen Crabbe, 13 points. The flow of the offense just worked perfectly. This is just the Nets performance that you want to see. From a team that lacks real superstar talent, probably obviously D'Angelo Russell and Rondé and maybe Rondé, but Caris and Jared have that ability, but they're obviously not there yet. They're still very young. It was good to see just everyone contributing from our bench unit to our starting unit.
Yeah, agreed. And it was the passing. There was some good ball movement. It was very crisp. D'Angelo did a great job sometimes getting the ball up the floor really quickly, led to some fast break points or some mismatches. But let's talk about D'Angelo's game. For me, it was probably one of my favorite games of the season. Like you said, under control, really great passing. I think some of the passes, and somebody mentioned this on Twitter, he has a ton of highlight passes, and they just look so easy because of the way he kind of passes the ball. But they're really difficult, especially some of those bounces we saw last night.
The bounce passes, that mini bounce pass to Jared Allen was absolutely scintillating.
Beautiful.
That through the pass to Rondé, that was just an absolute bullet. And I think you posted on Twitter, it was like ISO, or it was Anthony Puccio. It was like ISO, bullet pass. It's like he sort of lured the defense, and then he just knew that pinpoint moment. Like there was only probably a millisecond to make that pass, and he made it. And obviously Rondé finished. Just some of the highlights from him were just awesome. And I think the control that he had, he knew when to push the pace. He knew when to slow it down. He only had 2 turnovers. Obviously early in the season, that was a real sort of key focus for him to sort of, maintain those low turnover numbers. 2 turnovers tonight, I'll take that any day of the week with a guy like D'Lo, especially if he's making those sort of fancy passes. For me, his best game of the season, you could say, the triple-double. He's had higher scoring performances. But we were talking off the pod. His plus-minus, which can be obviously a skewed stat, but when it comes to the starters, and for me, a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who has been starting and who has been playing against good units, he had a plus 11, the second highest other than Damari Carroll at the end of the night. Showed he had an impact on the floor and on the win as much as anyone apart from Damari. So great game by D'Lo.
Yeah, and it wasn't like some of the games we've seen from in the past where he, kind of has one terrible quarter and one really good quarter. It was kind of more balanced. One thing he's done probably this month in general, I think that's been great, is spending more time in the paint. And that's not necessarily taking more shots. It's just kind of penetrating, setting up his team. One thing he's done, I mentioned this on Twitter before too, kind of similar to what Joe Johnson used to do, is take a smaller guard and put him on his hip. Get in that position where it kind of is easier. They have to commit to either D'Angelo's floater or they have to commit to Jared Allen catching the alley-oop. So I think kind of working the system, getting a better feel for his teammates. There was a great article out this week, and it kind of talked about D'Angelo wanting to be a net for life and kind of fitting the system a little bit more, understanding it a little bit more. And I think just knowing his teammates, for longer in the season, it's kind of helped with the chemistry as well.
Yeah, I think chemistry is the number one thing that you just mentioned there, Nick. It takes a long time to develop that camaraderie, that chemistry. He's had that injury, obviously.
Yep.
There's only a finite amount of time you can do in preseason. On-court time is where you build that team chemistry. And because D'Lo's missed some time, and obviously Caris has missed some time, Coach Kenny's playing some, his units that he's been playing, his rotations have been, a bit mixed matched at times. I think what we have now with our rotation is one that we could see definitely going forward for a long time. I really like sort of Spencer Dinwiddie running the unit by himself, and then Caris LeVert and D'Lo together, because both of those guys have the ability to play off ball and the ability to create off the dribble. I think Caris LeVert last night had a couple dribble pull ups, not just from two but from three, and he looked really nice from there. And I think it was one of the Nets guys on Twitter. There might have been the Flatbush and Atlantic guy. He had the fact that if he can start nailing that from like 38 to 40%, that's going to make him an absolute threat and really hard to guard. So, I'm really liking what Coach Kenny's doing, and it's just being reflective of, the trust and sort of the performance that he's getting from his guys as well.
Yeah, moving over to Caris a bit, like I think obviously, I think becoming a catch and shoot 3-point shooter is something he's able to do. I think for him, the real question is becoming that off the dribble three shooter, and I think that'd be a game changer for him, especially with the way he can work in the pick and roll with Jared Allen, his interior passing, that floater we've seen from him, a pull up game from him would definitely be deadly with some of the moves we've seen him kind of put on players this year, especially bigs.
Nick, is he a starter next year?
I think a lot depends on the offseason, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was starting because the Nets seem to be very fond of him from any type of report or sources we've seen on Nets Daily as well. He's one of the untouchables on the team, so I think the goal for him would be to start. And I think it's a real possibility because one thing else I love about Karras is the way he kind of attacks us offensively. I think there might have been a play or two where he took off. Next time out, I think Kenny had him pick up maybe DJ Augustine or Mac, full court the whole thing, and it kind of ended up forcing a turnover. He got a deflection. I know he leads in nets and deflections. He's probably like top 3 in steals if I had to guess off the top of my head. So I think that defensive potential is something we could really see and kind of put him in that starting lineup. If he could start to lock guys down, especially with D'Angelo, we know he's never going to be a full stopper. If they can kind of pair him with a LeVert and Crabbe, who's really improved defensively as well, I think that'd be a nice like combo to kind of protect D'Lo.
Oh yeah, the yin and yang there would just be absolutely awesome. It wouldn't necessarily mean D'Lo could sort of get lazy and sag on defense, but it allows sort of Caris to sort of develop himself in a way. And Alan Crabbe showed some nice things. I really like that sort of 1-2-3-10. I think it could be really good. And whether you're starting Damari at the 4, Rondé at the 4, does Rondé come off the bench, and then Jared Allen at the 5. That's a really nice lineup, and I think we get a lot out of that lineup. Give Spencer Dinwiddie a sort of role with that sort of second unit, and you can stagger the minutes with him and D'Lo, because I like the way Spencer Dinwiddie works with Caris. I'm sure that there's going to be experimentation going forward with how Spencer works with D'Lo, but they are sort of ball heavy sort of guards. They can be in ways, so they sort of don't complement each other as nicely. But I think there's going to be games where their roles are going to complement each other. But at this stage right now, I think the chemistry going forward and the camaraderie and sort of how they balance each other out in terms of their game styles, that could be certainly a way going forward. Caris LeVert, I'm definitely be watching that space.
And I would not be surprised either if he was like a 6-man type player either, because he does bring some great energy. Him and Rondé just have like a feel when they're in the game. And I wouldn't be surprised if they want to do that and keep Crabbe in the starting lineup type of thing and Carroll at the 3, because I know Carroll's talked about really wanting to play the 3. But obviously this is all hypothetical because we have no idea what's going to happen in the offseason. Guys could be moved. Carroll could be moved. Lynn could be moved. We haven't really mentioned him much. But like I've mentioned on previous pods, he's still a good player.
Oh, definitely, Nick. The Jeremy Lin, we didn't even mention in the conversation about the fact that could he be starting? I mean, Joseph Tsai obviously is going to have a huge affiliation with him, having that sort of connection, that overseas connection. And obviously, he's a huge marketing piece for the Brooklyn Nets, with D'Angelo Russell, probably our 2 most marketable guys. Jared Allen certainly will be taking that mantle soon enough with that gorgeous throw of his. But a stat I saw on the ESPN recap, Nick, is the fact that the Nets bench averaged 43.7 points. It's second in the NBA. We scored 39 against the Orlando last night. Where does this bench obviously rank in the NBA today? I know the Raptors is probably, for me, the number one. But because the Nets, and I guess it's sort of a virtue of the fact that we don't have great starters talent, that our bench obviously gives us a heap of juice when it comes in. Where does it rank in the NBA? Is it the top 3? Is it the top 5 for you?
I think honestly, I'd have to see it in a winning situation where we'd have better starters, because
Yeah.
sometimes you see some of these bench guys play just as many minutes as the starters. Like we've seen nights where Joe Harris has played more minutes than the starters. Same thing with LeVert, same thing with Dinwiddie. So like right now, I mean, I think they have some really nice talent on their bench, but just like many, young teams, I think it's very inconsistent. some nights they'll come out and they'll put up a huge numbers and they won't have turnovers and be super efficient. Other nights they may put up 40 points, but they may, put that with 12 turnovers and a 38% shooting percentage. You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah,
the consistency, it's real like it's I think it's a lot tougher to gauge, teams that are below average. The Nets aren't great right now with NBA teams that are winning because there's different situations, different types of pressure. And you could probably be like, the Nets have had bench guys get garbage points, where they're just getting in there and kind of boosting their stats a little bit because the Nets are down. It's not like they've been blown out a ton this season, but there's still been opportunities like that. So I think it's kind of tough to gauge. I mean, talent wise, they definitely have some really nice pieces. If they were to keep Spencer Dinwiddie and Caris LeVert on the bench and Joe Harris, I think that's a really good 1, 2, 3 type of like bench unit.
yeah.
It's that 4, 5, like Cunningham has been good, but like looking at his track record, he's not that great of player in the NBA. Like not taking anything away from him, he's pretty much a solid NBA player. He's nobody's going to be like, oh my god, Dante Cunningham. I think that lack of like big on the bench really hurts the unit overall.
It does, but Dante Cunningham did also start from the New Orleans Pelicans. So I guess it's situational, like you mentioned. But the fact that Nick, just their boys and girls, everyone listening, provided some very nuanced take on the Nets bench. We aren't just homers here. We do love our Nets, but we're going to be real about it. But Nick, for me, the key last night, as well as our balanced offense, our defense was good, especially in that sort of fourth quarter where we sort of locked down the Magic for a period. But our key was, in the past, Aaron Gordon and Nikola Vucevic have had huge games against us. And Vucevic was still quite good, but we were able to sort of still get the ascendancy on the rebounds and get to the free throw line a lot. Did you see that in a similar way?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think getting to the free throw line is a really important thing for the Nets in general. It just kind of shows them being aggressive, especially when you have guys like Rondé or Herky Jerky. D'Angelo got to the line a little bit, like I said, working the paint. Jared Allen's a guy who I think could spend more time at the free throw line in the future, especially offensive rebounding wise. I mean, some of it I think was the fact that, defensively the Magic just weren't very good last night. They weren't putting in a ton of effort. But I would have to be very happy with that. One thing that stuck out to me, though, was the turnovers. Even though the
Yeah.
Magic didn't play great defense, 9 turnovers is still really good for the Nets because we've seen them turn the ball over probably 15 times with the defense doing nothing, with just throwing the ball out of bounds or missing a guy in a pass. So getting 9 turnovers, I felt like was a really big stat for the team. They didn't beat themselves.
No, definitely. And 9 turnovers and 28 assists. So I'll take that ratio any day of the week. It just showed that the balance and the sort of, the composure that the Nets showed. This was one of the more composed games I've seen from the Nets this year. We've had our moments where we've been a bit haphazard, a bit streaky, but I think, I think the competition, obviously the Magic themselves, they have a few sort of good players. You go to Vucevic, DJ Augustine's a sort of ready-made NBA player, and obviously Aaron Gordon, a guy who we could be targeting in the offseason. But overall, I back in the Nets talent every day of the week against this Magic team. So I think we were able to sort of take an advantage and go, look, we've got these guys. It wasn't against, we didn't have to play above ourselves in that sense. We played to our level and sort of took it to the next level and go, okay, we're better than these guys. Let's show it. Let's prove our worth. And I think we did that. And then some.
Yeah, and to touch on your point about the defense they had on Aaron Gordon and Vujicic, Gordon, I felt like Rondé did a better job. I felt like he finally felt like he had an idea of what Gordon was trying to do out there. Where the other games he kind of looked confused and just was kind of unsure about his game because Gordon's changed so much. And I felt like he did a really good job kind of getting him under control. And then when he really tried to attack him in the paint one play, I think Rondé just kind of took a step back, forced him into a travel. That's just something an experience you get from playing that player. Like he just understood what Gordon was trying to do in that situation. Vujicic, like he's just a tough matchup. He's a tough matchup for the Nets right now with Jared Allen
Yeah.
not having the size, but he did a pretty good job. It's not like he locked him down or anything. He got his, but it really didn't impact the game in the sense where the Nets were in control most of the time.
Yeah, and a shout out to James Herbert, who had a great piece on CBS Sports
Excellent.
about Jared Allen. Absolutely awesome one. I'll definitely be adding him once we get this podcast out because it was just a really, really nice in-depth piece about Jared Allen, not only the basketball, but the person and sort of the lead up to him. So I definitely recommend everyone check that out. Check out his Twitter page. I'm sure I'll tweet it out as well, actually, for everyone as well. But I think, Jared Allen has had an absolutely great season. His development has been out of sight. But yeah, you mentioned the rebounding and the overall defense. Talking about Rondé Hollis Jefferson, our boy Corey at K-Wall Hoops, I posted out that poll that got a bit of traction last night about whether Nets fans would rather have Aaron Gordon or Jabari Parker. And of course, Aaron Gordon got most of the love just because he's a better player. But Corey posted a nice little, question in relation to that. Is that what did the Nets do with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson if that were to happen? Now, this is obviously a hypothetical, Nick, and we might have touched on it somewhat. We have touched on the fact is what is Rondé's future. But if we were to get a free agent, that leaves his future as a starter even more in doubt. Where do you think that the Nets go if we were to get a big sort of 4 or 5 as a free agent?
Yeah, just one thing. I got an inside source telling me that a Nets fan talked to Corey about Rondé Hollis Jefferson yesterday, but I'll leave that out there. I was hyping him up, and he gave me a 4-15 game, but oh well. So at least Corey did show him some respect on Twitter. I think it's tough. Like I've mentioned to you, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of going after Aaron Gordon or Jabari Parker. I know a lot of Nets fans like, let's just get some talent in here. But I
Yeah.
still am like long-term approaches. Like I'm not sure how well they really fit with the team. Gordon, like how good can he really be? He has his flaws in his game. Consistency is an issue, but we've also seen Orlando players leave and have a lot of success. Jabari's just kind of like a real big risk with the knee. You have no idea, obviously, and we mentioned on here before some of the issues. Unless it was a really good 4, like I'm not really like I want to upgrade. If I'm like getting a player, I want a real upgrade over Rondé. And I'm not saying Parker and Gordon wouldn't be an upgrade, but I want a real upgrade. Like I'm not trying to like throw all my money for guys that I'm not sure are even all-star players. When I have Rondé, who is possibly an above average starter, and like we've seen on Twitter before, people mention his game's improving. He improved a lot in this offseason. He went from no offensive game to having a post game, having a little mid-range game. His passing's improved. One thing I've said to you before, I'd like to see the playmaking and maybe the handling clean up. If he can't add that 3-point shot, I think there's other aspects he can improve. So it's like I'm not trying to spend money or put myself in a situation where I'm like limiting myself. When I have Rondé, who's serviceable definitely as the starter for now, unless there's somebody out there who's like, okay, we can't miss on this guy. Like it's like a top 5, top 10 power forward or something who's really going to improve the team in a way that Rondé can't.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. And I ranked the 3 prospects, and Rondé for me was second because you got Aaron Gordon, Jabari Parker's injury history is very questionable. His defense is even more questionable. But I think Rondé, we've made this comparison before in terms of how Draymond Green has found success in that Golden State Warriors lineup. He's the 4th option. If Rondé can be our 4th option and be like a really glued defensive guy, you mentioned that passing game, develop somewhat of a 3-point shot. I'm still not confident in Draymond Green's 3-point shot, especially when Steph Curry or KD aren't out there. I don't trust it. But if it can at least be passable for Rondé, similar to what Draymond Green is, then that's his perfect role going forward. And that's not necessarily a max guy or a number 1 guy, but I think that's perfect in the Nets system. And I think the Nets value internal development in a similar way to what the Golden State Warriors have done. They drafted all those guys. They drafted Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Obviously KD took them to the next level, but you look at our sort of young core, Rondé, Dlo, and Caris, and Jared Allen this year. That's a core that you can develop around going forward. And I think the Nets really value that sort of internal, that player development, that player culture. That I think they're not going to be given away for nothing.
One thing that Draymond does really well and Rondé does well, and that's bring the ball up to court. For
Yeah.
off the rebound, kind of picking up that pace, getting to defense and mismatches. I think that makes a big difference, and that's kind of an underrated aspect of his game. We saw Trevor Booker do that a lot. It's nice to see Rondé do that. And like you said, 3-point shot's going to be big for his game. I'm all about keeping the cap space open, and this has been mentioned on Twitter, and I've kind of thought this way before. Like you said, that young core is really starting to pick up. Brooklyn's a big time place to play. Like you come to Brooklyn and you're a great player, you have a legacy, and like you're the first great player that played in Brooklyn. Like no offense to Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, I don't even want to say Darren Williams. Like no offense to those guys, but like they didn't really do anything. Like nobody's been to the Eastern Conference Finals with the Nets. No one's had a finals appearance with the Nets since New Jersey. Like you come to Brooklyn, you can be the man of Brooklyn, and I think that's something that is attractive to free agents. So I'm trying to sit on that cap space and let the Nets look like a great opportunity for a star player to come to at some time. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be, LeBron James or Anthony Davis or somebody, but if they can get like an all-star, like somebody like a Jimmy Butler, like I'm not saying that exact player, but kind of along those lines where he can really impact the team and take them to another level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's attractive to especially those sort of young up-and-coming all-stars, Nick, because
Yes.
all the players have just been raving about Coach Kenny and Sean Marks' culture and what they're developing there. And obviously, everyone has great facilities, but our facilities overlooking Prospect Park and out there in Brooklyn, it's one of the prettiest places I've ever seen. And if I'd pay to play ball there rather than getting paid to play ball there, that's for sure. So I think, Rondé and just the core that we have going forward is going to be really interesting. And I think that the Nets development is going to be a key part of that. But also, Sean Marks is going to have a very interesting offseason, as we've mentioned a few times. But, going forward, Nick, we've got a couple more games left. Can we reach that 30 mark? Is it 2 out of reach?
Yeah,
Right now, I think it probably is as well.
yeah, I think they'd have to almost be undefeated, and they have to
Yeah.
face some teams that are going to be really clawing for a playoff spot, like the Bucks and the Heat. I mean, it's not impossible. Like, I'm not going to say they can't have it because D'Angelo said after the game they'd like to put some wins together and kind of build that momentum for next year. And a young team, if there's one thing you can see, I mentioned, 3-2 in their last 5, which is positive, is kind of like a nice boost for the team, and they kind of start to play at another level and they start to buy in defensively. I think defensively is like where this team can really make a jump this offseason. Some of that alone is just going to come with physical growth. We've mentioned it like 100 times on this podcast. We don't even have 100 episodes. D'Angelo, Caris LeVert, Rondé, Jared Allen, Dinwiddie to an extent, all putting on muscle, being able to defend a little bit better. It should help on the boards too. And also, I think just like the chemistry, buying to the sense like, all right, if I help out, like, my teammate, like somebody's going to help out and get my guy. Like, I think at times, like the Nets are almost scared to help because they don't believe in the rotations. Kind of building on those rotations and that defensive chemistry will be big for next season.
Oh, yeah, it'll be huge. And Nick, just one that I'm sure plenty of Nets fans want to know about. Does D'Angelo bring back the rubber band for the next game? He played so well with it. It's got to come back. I want it back. Bring back Scrunchy Dlo.
I agree. I think Scrunchy Dlo should finish out the season, especially if he plays really
True.
well. That should be his like new thing. Next thing you know, you'll see a whole bunch of kids at summer camps wearing scrunchies.
Scrunchies and afros, man. I feel like that's going to be a good look. Anthony Davis has already posted on Twitter that he wants to shave his eyebrow. I feel like we should post a poll. Does D'Lo bring back the scrunchie? I feel like I might have to put that
I
up.
think you should. I think Nets, they might not win, be the best team in the league this year, but they could be in contention for all hair team.
Oh, man.
D'Angelo, Jared Allen, even Rondé, Damari Carroll, Jeremy Lin, even though he's injured, like some real underrated guys on the squad on the hair game.
The hair game is out of sight. I think Joe Harris needs to clean up a little bit. I'm not. I mean, because I love him so much, I need him to sort of, bring it up a little bit. He's got the potential to have some Gordon Hayward-esque looks about him in terms of how he frames his face. Because very handsome man, very awesome bucket getter, but to take it to the next level, to have that sort of that Brooklyn swag. I reckon Joe Harris lift it a bit. Beard, yeah, beard would be nice.
Bearded Joe Harris.
Yeah, but there's plenty of potential not only on the court for our boys, but off the court as well.
Exactly. And I mean, living in Brooklyn, there's a lot of opportunity. Getting back to the basketball a little bit, though, Jack, are you concerned with Spencer Dinwiddie at all? Like, confident wise, you can kind of see him out there. He just doesn't look the same. He was out there in portions of the game. He was just super quiet. Do you think, the fact he's coming off the bench has, impacted him, or is it just kind of confidence losing it in his jump shot? He just hasn't been the same. What do you think's the issue for Spencer right now?
I think it's an adjusting role, Nick. I think he achieved most of his success early in the season, going to the skills challenge as being the Nets' number one guy. He's not that anymore. He's the number one guy off the bench, you could say. But even then, you could say, Caris LeVert's that guy. Joe Harris has been that guy in terms of his production. But I think Spencer's certainly adjusting to his role. And I think, he's still impacting the game off ball, which is, I think, a thing that Spencer doesn't get enough credit for in terms of his, defense, in terms of his ability to sort of, just impact the game in terms of his leadership and his leadership qualities and just the intangibilities that, he has. He certainly hasn't been putting up the lofty numbers that we've seen, but I think he's due for a big game. And I'm sure before the end of the season, we're going to see one or two of those performances from Spencer. There might be some games where Caris gets arrested or D'Angelo might get hurt or something.
Don't say that, Jack. Don't say that.
Knock on wood, knock on wood. But, Kenny's been known to rest guys. I should have said resting.
Yeah.
But I should.
All Nets Nation is about to come after Jack.
I did knock on wood down here in Australia, that beautiful eucalyptus wood out in Australia. So I think, Spencer's due for a big performance. I'm sure it's going to come. And I think at the same time, the fact that we haven't been talking about it shows that it isn't that big of a deal. Spencer's still, in his infancy in terms of his NBA experience. and he's going to have those ups and downs, as a lot of our guys are. And I think to overreact to them too much would be, very irrational. And I think he's having his ups and downs, and right now just happens to be a bit of a lull in his form. But I'm sure he's going to get back up there because we've seen the highest of highs from him.
Yeah, I think role is definitely having a big impact on him. Going from having the ball, almost 100% of the time and everybody looking for you to make the shot until kind of being like a second option. Because even like you mentioned, Caris LeVert at times has run the offense, especially when Dinwiddie's been kind of cold. I think one area where Dinwiddie's going to kind of improve his game would be being more efficient in a smaller role. We've seen him do that in the past, and I think getting that three-point shot in a catch and shoot situation where he's like to take a lot of pull-ups this year, I think if he worked on that catch and shoot a bit, especially in the corners where he seems to get open, because one thing Spencer does do well, like you said, off ball is his basketball IQ, kind of finding that open space and kind of rotating offensively to the open area where his teammate can hit him.
Definitely, and I think his ability to sort of space the floor in ways with his dribble and know when to make the right play is one thing that Spencer. We talked about that assist to turnover ratio. I'm sure it'd still be top 5 in the NBA today,
Yeah, I
despite
still
his
think it's number one still.
and that's huge because he still gets his 5 assists, 5 to 7 assists almost a night, even in his lesser role, because he's just careful with the ball. He provides something that that a lot of our Nets guys don't have. D'Lo provides us a unique perspective. Caris provides a unique perspective, and D'Lo does, and Dinwiddie does. They've all got a unique skill set that I think has value to this Nets team going forward.
Yeah, it's just all about kind of putting it together and having guys fit into that role, and the
Yeah,
Nets kind of finding out who's going to fit here, and what guys can we trade and along those lines. So there's
yeah.
definitely, like you said, a lot of questions for Sean Marks, the whole Nets organization, about what they're going to do. But that wraps it up for today. Jack, thank you for hopping on. As always, you can catch the Brooklyn Buzz on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, and now airing on Dash Radio.